Hello again. This is episode number 5 of the Side Hustle series. In this episode, I sit down with Reece Fish. Reece is an artist, a painter, but most importantly, a healer. And I use that word to describe him based on the conversation that we just had. Really sweet guy. I met Reece through a friend in common named Brandon. Brandon invited me and some friends to this art gallery, and Reece was one of the artists that was showing his artwork there. And so we went, and immediately after speaking with him for about just a few seconds, I knew that I wanted to sit down and talk to him, and I'm glad I did. He was nice enough to accept my invitation. We sat down, and I got a lot of good, new, fresh perspective on life and the way he goes about it. So I'm excited to share this with you all. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. And here it is. Sweet. Thank you for being here, Reece.
Thank you for having me.
I'm super excited. So, for context, we know each other through Brandon. Brandon Daniels, good friend of mine. Just so that you have an idea of what my relationship looks like with Brandon. I met him in college. We had a class together, and we were both really into music. And one thing led to the next. We ended up not recording music together, but just sort of getting together and writing and sort of playing. And it started becoming this thing of, okay, well, maybe let's play a show. And so fast forward a couple years later, we've been in bands together, and that guy's like a brother to me. Yeah.
He's a good guy.
He's a great guy.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's great.
So you know Brandon from, like, high school?
We went to high school together. We didn't really know each other that well in high school. We kind of knew of each other, and we had maybe a couple classes together.
Nice.
But we got to know each other better through mutual friends that we went to high school with after high school.
Nice.
Yeah.
So have you guys have a lot of one-on-one time, or has it always been sort of like more like an acquaintance, deeper, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's
a
kind
good
of
question. I don't know that we've had a ton of like one-on-one, but I feel like I've been with him and Arya. I don't know if you've met Arya, but we used to hang out, and
or maybe
hanging out in a context that's like intimate enough that I don't think we felt like we needed to be strangers with one another.
Right.
I feel like he's the type of person that's just is who he is.
And he's such an easy guy to get along with.
Yeah, he is.
You know, the best part about it is that he's very communicative about. For example, do you want to hang out? Nope. Okay, cool. Next time. Do you want to do this certain thing? No, not my vibe. Not tonight. And you're like, okay. He's so honest that it is very easy to get along with, because you're like, okay, cool, no problem.
You can trust someone like that.
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
know they're going to tell you the truth.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So fast forward to how you and I sort of got introduced to each other. We have a chat here in for like a group of friends in Austin. And he mentioned that he was going to go to this like an art exhibition, and it was about mushrooms, right? And I was super into the idea, and I think that day we didn't have anything to do either, so I was like, hell yeah, let's go. What a great experience. Just so much. I'm an art fanatic, period. whether it's film, music, paintings, whatever. And so it was just overwhelming in a great way to just see so much of it in a room, and you're like, wow, there are so many talented people out there. It's insane.
Yeah.
And it felt even more special to walk up into your dojo studio and be like, wow, this guy's out of everybody here, right? That's just the way it comes across, right? You got a studio within this gallery, which is really impressive. I'm curious to ask you, how does that come about? Because there are so many artists, right? How do you end up with that privilege? Do they have to choose you? I don't know.
Yeah. I'm glad this is a podcast in the sense that you're interviewing a lot of people, because I have a feeling that what I have to say may be different than some. Maybe I'm wrong, but my angle, it doesn't exclude practicality, but it certainly includes things that are may feel a little bit more ambiguous. I have, for the last few years, really put my efforts and my intentions largely in my inner space, working on myself. And seemingly, up to this point, that has seemed to almost like opportunities have arisen like in correlation with that work. So I don't want that to come off as like something that seems completely ambiguous or like passive, because it's actually very disciplined and intentional. It's just sort of like putting my discipline in a different arena of moving forward, I guess. So who's to say? I mean, you could take a lot of different angles. I just applied at the right place at the right time, but it all happened like that, right when it needed to, from my perspective. So I think there's 1,000,001 ways to do this sort of thing, but that's what my journey has been like.
That's awesome. So how do you get here, right? I mean, I'm sure there's, and I'm gonna be a little bit more specific, right? Because I'm sure there's a lot that has happened to get you here. I mean, it's like, but more specifically, when talking about what you're doing as an artist, would you consider it a career now?
A career, that's a big word.
Yeah.
I'll take it. I'm in a place right now where there's a realization. It's not an insistence that it's the only way that I make money, but it's an insistence that this is my life from here onwards. And not to say that it won't change. I could move on to something completely away from art in the future. But there's just a knowing in me that I need to do this. I need to lean all the way into this right now. And I need to make it work. I need to figure out a way to make it work.
That's so cool. Was there a shift in your mindset that got you there? Or have you always, up until this point, right, thought about or looked at art that way, as in, this is it for me, right? This is what I want to do. Has it always been like that, or was there sort of like a switch?
There was a switch. There was a couple of switches. I've always liked art. I've always done art. It's been something that's had some consistency that's allowed me to cultivate the skills, I think, the technical skills and also the creative skills that are important in any aspect of art, but particularly in visual art. And so I've always really liked it, but I had these strong programs of things that I'd heard from other people about, like, well, artists don't make money. And so anytime I felt like I was like, maybe I can do this for a living, and then I can't blame it on anybody else, because ultimately it was me. It was ultimately me stopping myself. So honestly, like, I was my biggest roadblock most of my life. And so, like I talked about the inner work earlier, like, I think one of the biggest things is, and it was a gradual process, it wasn't really the flip of a switch, but gradually uncovering my own innate worthiness to pursue what I want to pursue, and leaning into my why, I think, was important. Not just making art for the sake of making art, but because it's not an easy, I mean, I don't imagine anything in the arts generally is an easy road in life, because it is all on your own shoulders. And so as I cultivated my own why, it strengthened my ability to do whatever I need to do to just figure it out and make it work.
What is that why?
I'm trying to figure out a way to word this that isn't a bit cheesy. I progressively have grown displeased with the trajectory of our world, of the way of, let's say, the media generally, the content that we generally are exposed to, whether it be from politicians or school systems or social media or any sort of system, really. What we're being pumped with, I feel like, isn't very empowering, and I think if we're paying attention to our environment and our mental health and our physical health across the board, it seems to be a reflection of that, in my experience. And I think for me, it feels important to be able to put something that's just like media, it's content, it's information, it's energy, that's uplifting, it's empowering, it's encouraging, that life can be good, that life can be worth living, that our planet can be worth living on.
That's very interesting. So within that process or thought process, do you find that through your art you could provide some of that sort of uplifting content and sort of fight for what's the word that I'm looking for? The good side, right? Is that how you see your work?
I guess so. I mean, I wouldn't use the word fight, and I say that specifically because it almost feels like a distinct means of change that's different from a lot of what our gut reaction, including my own gut reaction in the past, has been, which is to fight, which is to rally and scream and be like, why are we not being treated? Why are we not being seen? Why are things going the way we're going? We need to wake up, or whatever. And that's a very rational response, I think, but in another sense, it's also like perpetuating the same type of energy that's keeping us down. And so in some sense, it feels like things like art and music can be, it's subtler, but it's like you're slipping little subliminal messages into people's psyches of just like, whoa, I feel a little better. I don't know, like just driving in my car over here, I just had certain music on, and listening to that music, I'm just like, I'm feeling the energy of that music, and it makes me feel good. It makes me feel alive, happy to be alive on this planet.
What kind of music do you listen to?
Oh, all sorts of music. It happened to be like very, I listen to a lot of like harp music and stuff, like just very,
like instrumental?
Yeah, instrument. Yeah, just very, not super complex, but just light, carrying me upward music.
Dude, that's very impressive, because I so growing up, I have an uncle that would always listen to classical music. right? His son, which he's my cousin, right? He ended up playing violin, and he's insanely good. Plays with plenty of artists everywhere, and so obviously that sort of trickled down, which I don't know, I tend to go through rabbit holes, but the whole point being about classical music, it's, I love music in general, right? And I enjoy listening to instrumentals and more calming music like that. But there's always a limit for me, right? It always gets to a point where I'm like, all right, I need something else. I need rock.
Sure.
Sort of like the other side of, or maybe not that extreme, but something else. And here's where I'm going with this. I have so many thoughts all the time. So I see sort of this, the way you carry yourself and what you're describing. I felt moments like that, right? But it seems to me that you're in it. You are no longer, how do I explain it? I mean, it's not something that you're feeling for a couple minutes, right? You're kind of living in this way. You're internalizing things, and there's no switch to where you kind of forget about it, because I think that's sort of what happens. I think anybody that would listen to that would be like, yes, this is very logical, and yes, I agree. But then you forget, and then you're sort of back in the.
What are you forgetting?
Do you see where I'm getting at? Like, and I'm sorry.
No,
this
it's okay.
This is sort of going like this. What I'm trying to describe is that I can have moments where, similarly to listening to classical music, I'm like, wow, this is very serene. I like this. This is very calming. I like how I feel now. It's like doing yoga. I like the tranquility that comes with this, but I don't want to do that all the time.
Yeah.
Right. And I think the reason I'm thinking about that is because the way, from our conversation, right, it seems like you want to do that all the time, right? You're naturally, right? In a great way, because you're no longer being snapped back into reality. Like, I'll have moments of and when I'm saying reality, I mean that in a good way, as in you can see past it, right? I am cursed with, even though I have moments of bliss where everything is just clear and my purpose is very clear at times, I will think about, fuck, I gotta wake up tomorrow and work, and that'll snap me away from that completely, and I lose that progress or that how do I say that that I'm on a roll. Like, there's nights,
momentum.
Exactly. Do you get where I'm going with this? I don't know if I'm explaining myself correctly. I hope that I am. All that to say, how have you managed to be able to stay consistent with that way of thinking, that way of seeing yourself, that way of being able to stay true to your real purpose and not let the noise kind of snap you out of it? I feel like that's the best way that I can summarize this whole rabbit hole that I just went through right now.
That's a good rabbit hole.
Does it make sense now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 100%. Commitment. And I have things that I've gradually been led to that are strong areas of commitment. And I imagine largely those will be different things for everyone. But they're going to be moving in a similar direction. Like, I acknowledge a directionality of life. I acknowledge in times where I was like, my life is, I don't know if objectively is the right word, but clearly better now than it was when I was consistently suicidally depressed. And that doesn't mean I'm happy all the time now. I'm not. But I have a commitment to, when I start to notice myself slipping, I have tools to come back to that I can depend on, that will help to bring me back up. And it doesn't have to happen within 5 minutes. It doesn't have to happen even that day. But I think just maintaining awareness, even just the awareness of, I'm slipping, I don't feel good, and not feeling like I need to think my way out of it, because thinking is typically how I got into it. It's my mind spinning me into chaos, into negativity, into low self-worth. So I find for me, often the way that helps me to get out of it is to feel into my body. I think is a good anchor. Like the energy in my body, like I often say, like, if you close your eyes, like, how do you know that your body exists? There's often like a little bit of a buzz, you know, say in your limbs or something. It's like, how do you know your hand exists? Well, there's kind of a buzz of like, this is where my hand is. Paying attention to that buzz, because it feels like all our emotions get stored in our body, and when we give them awareness, that awareness can help things to move on and out. Our body, our being wants to return back to a joyful state. We just live in a world where we're constantly getting, like I said, we're constantly getting bombarded with negativity, and we take that into our mind and we take that into our body. So it's hard to maintain that consistency, to be that light within ourselves, to pull ourselves out of it consistently.
I agree. There's no doubt that social media hurts hurts people in that way. Do you consume any? I mean, are you on social media often, or how are you pretty removed? How do you see it?
I hold it at an arm's distance.
Okay.
Because I know it's just part of the game, especially as an artist, especially as a visual artist.
I hate it so much.
But it's like, you know, on Instagram, I'm sure it's similar for a musician, but it's like, I'm visual art, and Instagram is such a visual medium of like, it makes sense almost just as a portfolio. I have a website too, but just as a way of reaching eyes. But I do hold it at a distance, and I'm constantly reinterpreting and questioning my relationship to it. I'll delete it for a couple days, and then I'll re-download it and post something, and then I'll notice myself just habitually getting on it and getting sucked in, so I'll delete it again.
Same. Which, by the way, on your website, beautiful website.
Oh, thank you.
It is really impressive. I like how it
a little
moves.
wavy bit.
Yeah. Really cool. But I do the same thing, and what I'll do sometimes is, I haven't done it in a while, but I would delete it from my phone, and then cheat by basically going on a browser.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm like, so what is the point? You know what I mean?
It does feel a little more distant
Right,
in the browser.
right.
Yeah.
But I just feel like I lose every time. I'm like, why did I do this?
Yeah.
So, okay, super interesting to hear your take on that.
Mm.
So once you, I guess, when did you have the realization that you needed to do that inner work?
When did I have that realization? I think the first key of it was when I was in high school, gradually becoming more and more anxious. Started in middle school, early middle school into high school, more and more anxious. But when that anxiety accumulated to the point of like heavy depression and me like really not wanting to be here, I mean, in some sense, it's tough to be in that place because you're like, when you're really depressed, you can't see good things. It's beyond your field of view because you're so contracted. Everything in your life is so contracted to the tunnel vision of doom and gloom that is your reality at that point in time. But I think having little windows of like, my mom, she's a counselor and she did yoga and stuff, and she like gave me a breathwork audio. So just doing that and like doing this breath work, and I was like, okay, I feel a little calmer, which is like from here to here. But that matters when you're, any little thing matters. And
Yeah, it's a change. You're like, whoa.
Right. Yeah.
Really cool. Brandon mentioned that you were in Hawaii at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Can I please hear the story on how that came about?
Gosh, it's a hard story to describe.
In what way?
I wouldn't know how to describe my life now to myself at 16. I was like an atheist at 16, and my life operates off of laws of the universe that they're not unknown, but they're not often acknowledged, and so they seem crazy. They seem out there.
Safe space.
Well, I joined this community, online community. It was called Coherence Healing at the time. It's called 1.0 now, and it helped me in my journey. I got really physically ill, and so I couldn't do much of anything anyway. I was getting my degree in counseling.
Before the community or after joining the community?
I was getting ill right before I joined the community.
Okay, gotcha.
I discovered it in opportune timing, let's say.
Okay.
And was getting progressively more ill. Started out as digestive issues, and then my whole body was starting to fall apart. And so like, and I was doing grad school in counseling, which felt like a good direction, but I just don't think it was quite mine. And I was around well-meaning people, but I was learning things on my individual path that weren't being acknowledged. And I realized I can't help other people move forward within the limited scope that's sort of required of me in the academic counseling, what they're teaching, and what they teach in sort of all the bureaucracy that you have to follow under that system. It's great. It's amazing. I've gained a lot within myself from counseling, but they're just things that I think that are really important, like diet and mindfulness and spirituality, and things that are a little underappreciated, under-acknowledged in that sphere, and that were so important for my mental and physical healing, that I was just like, I can't not have that be a part of how I'm engaging with people. How do I shorten this?
Well, you don't have to.
So anyway, so I'm in the school, and I'm realizing like this is making me ill. Partially, it's not the only thing. There are many reasons, but I realized that it was not helping, at least. So I dropped out of school, and I ended up somehow in this apartment that I didn't have to pay for with this friend, and we just leaned all the way in on healing. We were doing these coherence healing things every single day, and eating just like crazy healthy food, and my whole life was geared into this to healing. Healing was my scope of reality, and I had some money saved up to do that. And at one point, the lease was running out, and I was like, I don't know what the hell I'm going to do. I guess I'm just going to have to go back and live with my parents. And then I ended up talking with a guy who has a powerful sort of connection, who was in part of that community. And he was like, I see you going to Maui. And immediately something was like, whoa. Like, I just knew that's what I had to do. And we had a mutual friend who lives in Maui. And so I hit him up. I was like, hey, I'm thinking about coming to Maui. Like, what do you think? And he's like, yeah, we can figure something out. And within the next like month, I was on a plane to Maui.
Had you been to Maui before?
No, I'd been to Hawaii with my parents when I was really young. It was a long time ago. I didn't really know anything about it. It was completely random in a sense. But I just knew it's what I had to do. And I didn't know, like, I got there and I was bouncing between hostels. It was really stressful the first week that I got there because I had no idea where I was going to live. And then all of a sudden, I got connected with a Telegram chat, and the guy who got me into it was like, yeah, just put like what you're looking for, like sort of like a housing and vehicle thing. And I put it in there, and like within the next week, I had a place to live. I had a beat down car to use, like a beater car
that you could use for free.
No, I had to buy the car.
Oh, okay.
But it was a beater car, so it was like a very, very, very cheap. And I was actually recommended by somebody who's quite tuned in. He said, get a car that could break down on the side of the road so you don't have to worry about selling it. Right when I got there. And so I had this idea of like, okay, I'm not going to be here a really long time. I'm here to heal. This is part of my healing process. So I just did that. And I was encouraged to go to the beach every day. So I ended up, the beach that I resonated with was this nude beach. So I went to the nude beach pretty much every day and just let the water wash away negativity in my body and got rid of a lot of programs around my body and around nudity and around just all these programs around how it's okay to be in the world.
Yeah. So were you working when you were there, or?
No, I kept so I had some money saved up. I guess I was fortunate to have parents that were quite that nailed into me sort of being very conservative with my money. So I hardly spent any money ever in high school. So I was just saving up money from working, and I was investing it. So I had some money saved up that had accumulated. It was like almost 50 grand.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't even know how that happened. But anyway, felt like it needed.
But this is in at this point, you were how old?
23.
Wow.
Something like that. 24.
Like 50 grand being 23. Wait, that's pretty impressive, 24? Man.
Oh, don't get me wrong. There's privilege involved here, because I think when I graduated college, my parents like gave me a good amount. It might have been like, feels a little weird saying, but just like a good amount of money I graduated college. So
yeah, you don't have to get into it, but either way, I mean, 6 out of 10 college kids would have spent that. You know what I mean? It's just a time of where money. It's just money.
It's hard to appreciate.
Right.
Yeah.
So the fact that you were, however much, right, you were able to hang on to and had that discipline of just, doing something good with it, right, for yourself. Mm-hmm. It's really impressive. But then you are doing this in Maui. You were there for how long?
About a year.
Wow, it's a long time.
Yeah.
Why? What made you not stay?
I mean, I had this, like I mentioned earlier, I had this sense going in that like this was going to be a temporary thing. And I kept expecting something huge to happen, I think, as we often do in life. And like I said, I went to the beach like every day, and I met some cool people and had some cool experiences. And at one point I ended up getting connected with this woman, this very loving older woman who had like a group. That's kind of hard to explain in a bit of a tangent, But that is to say, there was also a while where I ended up hardly even leaving the house I was staying in. And I was just like, I was still doing those online healing sessions, but most of the rest of the time I was just laying in bed, feeling into my body, like releasing emotions. So all of the stuff that I'd accumulated, all the mental and emotional limitations that I'd accumulated throughout my life, I was just like clearing house. So really not much of anything. Didn't have many friends. I had some friends that were like kind of acquaintances that I knew, but I didn't like keep up with super regularly, and had some people I knew online that were very supportive throughout that process. But a lot of it was just me, myself, and I. Just like, who am I? What am I doing? What is this? What is reality? Like just deeper and deeper, going in and in and in. And at some point my car broke down as was suggested. And so I was like, I got a feeling I'm gonna leave soon.
It was the car. It said no more.
Yeah, oh God, it broke down so many times. It was such a hassle. But it was cool. It gave me the opportunity to hitchhike some, which was a beautiful experience as well. But
how did that go? I've never done that, and I don't know if I could trust just in general enough to be able to do it as a hitchhiker and as a driver.
Yeah, it's a different game over there in Maui. I don't know if it's the same everywhere in Hawaii or in everywhere on Maui, but I think it probably is. But it's a thing on Maui.
Oh,
people
really?
do it. I did it for other people. People did it for me. A guy like took me on the back of his, moped thing or whatever one time.
Wow.
When I was like, yeah, it's really beautiful. It's just a whole different, like I would feel different doing it around here. It's just a whole different energy. Not on the whole island. There's a little bit of everything as there is everywhere.
Sure.
But there's something there that makes that more okay.
That's so interesting because I have been to Texas and Puerto Rico and back and forth and back and forth, just seeing family over there. The only other place that I visited, I mean, a couple islands here and there on a cruise, but you don't really get to know the island because you're in touristy areas, really. I went to England. But I've never really. But it's also. It all feels so westernized that it just feels like home, like back at home, but just with a bit of a different flavor, right? That difference I've never experienced in terms of culture, to where you really feel like you're in a different place altogether.
So in Puerto Rico, doesn't feel that different from here to you?
It does on a, and I just said on a cultural sense. Culturally, it's very different, but maybe it's just because I'm used to it, right? And so it doesn't feel as, I mean, every time I'm home, I want to stay there, right? And then to a certain degree, I'm like, no, but I gotta go back for whatever reason. It's like I need to be here. But that's what I'm saying. That's what I know, right? So it's that and this. But I don't think I've experienced anything other than the two things I know, which I think I'm due for, because I could use the additional perspective. I don't know. I think that must have done something for you, right? That, I don't know. It's just so something that is just not common here, right? It must be somewhat of a culture shock in a good way, that you're like, this is okay. Like, I can do this and not stress out about it,
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
whoa.
Yeah.
And for it to feel so transactional in a way that there's no commitment to it. Like, there's no I'm going to get in the moped with this dude and I feel like I'm going to have to entertain a conversation, or like no, you were just probably just gonna drop me off, and it's like, see you later, dude. Thanks.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
that's so crazy. You know, it's
Yeah.
something so, it's so, should be so normal and like,
Yes.
so simple.
Yes.
But to me, it's a wild idea
Mm-hmm.
that you get to do that.
Yeah.
What other aspects of the culture or your time there were kind of like a slap in the, or not a slap, but a bucket of cold water for you to be like, whoa, that's different.
I'll just say I think the biggest bucket of cold water that I got was going to India right after I graduated college.
Whoa.
Which is very different culturally, and just how their culture is organized and their society is organized, or lack thereof. Not that it's not organized. It almost feels like an organized chaos comparative to a Western perspective. There's an immense beauty hidden in there that I think can and is often overlooked. Because there's like trash everywhere in the streets, and there's animals walking around all over the place, but there's a strange harmony to it, and there's like more of a spirituality interwoven into the culture and the people and the structure that I think we probably used to have, but we don't. That has kind of been diminished over here. And I guess in that way, it's similar to how Maui was. It almost feels like that. And spirituality feels like kind of a loaded word. I try not to use it a lot because I used to scoff at it, but I'm not sure what other word to use. Just like harmony.
Yeah.
And just a sense of harmony, and like I've had this thought a lot recently of like where we're going, or where I would like to go, is like that there's no strangers anymore. The annihilation of the idea of a stranger. That everybody you walk past is a friend. And all it takes is everybody finding who they are within themselves. Because I don't look at people like... I still do sometimes, for sure. But I try, and it's shifted a lot for me in the way in which I've seen other people. And I think Maui helped with that, which is that I see myself more in other people. Which doesn't make people feel so threatening and othering and like we're competing, but just like we all want the same thing. And if we could remember that, the same things, if we could remember that, then we could like, oh my gosh, this world would change really quickly in a positive way. We just have to get on the same page.
What do you think it is about India that has that energy to it? Because I don't know much about India. I've never been to India. Is it something within their like past, what gives it that aura, right, of spirituality? What is it, if you know? I mean, based on your time there.
I had a phase where I was really into India and Indian figures and culture and things, and I wouldn't be so bold as to say that I know, but what I can say are things that seem to be correlated, which is like there's been a lot of people in India. I don't know if it's just like a product of the context of the culture, but a lot of people that have historically, certainly in recent history, that have done a lot of really deep, profound inward work. And I think that's reflected to a good degree in the culture. The culture is shifting too. It's westernizing like everywhere else. But there's certainly pockets and people that are that have taken the search for truth to a very extreme degree. I don't really like the word extreme in that sense, because it's actually a very natural thing, but I think you know what I mean in that.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of opportunities there. I came across at least one of them myself, and it's a profound experience to be in the presence of someone like that.
In what way?
That it's just like, whoa, like everything I knew about reality is a construct that's beginning to wobble in the presence of this person, just by the peace that they emanate.
Wow. So is it a conversation that happens, or it's just energy alone?
Both. I did like a silent retreat with this person. He was anonymous. You know, he didn't hold a stature or a title, but he had this system, and so it was a silent retreat, doing these practices and things, and so the practices helped, right? But just being in his presence, I feel like his energy helped to facilitate these like glimpses that I had in that context into something that was like so shockingly different, and yet it was the same reality. But like, it's kind of like, I don't know, is it safe to talk about drugs on this?
Yeah.
Like if you've ever had like a psychedelic?
Yes.
Yeah, like that, but like sober. And it's a different thing to have that experience sober. You're like, whoa, this isn't just a drug. This is reality. There's a truth to this.
Wow. That's very impressive. That that even is a thing that you can get there, right?
You can get it anywhere, but yeah, this seems to be
right. I mean,
yeah.
but it's just it's not normalized, right?
No.
I wouldn't have thought. I wouldn't even thought about it being possible, right? That's really cool. I hadn't thought about wanting to visit India, but I have to think that this is sort of gonna wake up a little bit of interest in my brain, and I may feed into it.
Yeah.
Because based on what I've seen on social media, the way you're describing it, it's one of those places that hasn't really been fully westernized yet. Like which to how you were describing it, it still holds its essence, and I don't feel like there's. Well, there are many cities that for sure hold their essence, but they're just not very known. Like you think about major cities and things like that, they're all going to be sort of westernized in a way. But anyways, really cool. Thank you for sharing that experience. Anywhere else that you've also visited that's been sort of special like that as well?
I did a program when I was in college that was like 2 weeks. There was a week in Cambodia and a week in Thailand. And it was under the context of like a volunteer group. There were aspects of that I'm like feel a little weird about in hindsight. And I know it also kind of narrowed my vision of what I was experiencing over there. Different than when I was just traveling, say, to India on my own. But that was right before I went to India, the summer before I went to India. So it was a nice like gateway. I think probably gave me the courage to go to India, which I went with my cousin. I didn't go completely alone, but it just seeing the world in a completely different way. We're so programmed by our culture of what life is, and we just take that in, and it's all we know. Like, think about a baby, what a baby knows about reality. It doesn't know anything. It's programmed about everything about reality. And so we take that for granted, and we assume that what we know, like, is how things are. And it's, and there's a lot of truth in it, too. And there's a lot of truth in science and all these things that we've been programmed with. But it also is a limitation that I think is helpful to crack outside of, with experiences like that.
That's awesome.
I mean, like, what was it like growing up in Puerto Rico?
Dude, it felt like a different timeline entirely, which obviously it was, because this is early 2000s, and I don't know, it just it feels so. I lived in a gated neighborhood, right? And our street specifically was a cul-de-sac, so it was like a dome. You know what I mean? It was just, everything was there. For, in terms of my, like, where I slept, right? And I hung out in the street with my friends, my neighbors. Obviously, to go to school and things like that, it was a different town, but within where I lived, it was very much so. It felt like the Sandy Cheeks dome underwater.
I love that you just assume I know what you're talking about, and I do.
Why would you not?
It's our generation.
But imagine all of her friends within the dome, and you're just hanging in a tree, playing basketball, figuring out your like phases together. It's like, oh, we're all into baseball now.
Oh, wow.
We're all into basketball now.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you'd collectively go through phases. And
Because, you share it with each other, right? Mm-hmm. So, and a lot of them were like short-lived, but I had a closer bonding experience with my cousin, the one that I was mentioning earlier with the violin. Mm-hmm. We really went through all the phases together. We had all the toys at the same time. We would get the same things. We both got into skateboarding, and then at some point, he was kind of done with skateboarding, but picked up videography. So he was filming me skate. So it was just best of both. You know what I mean? It was perfect. Yeah. And then we both got into music. He obviously very he just focused on violin, and that's why he's so good. My personality is I'm kind of all over the place, so I picked up different things. He's a multi-instrumentalist anyways. He just happens to be extremely good at violin as well. All that to say, I don't know, it felt like, I look at how my brother grew up here in Texas, and he was just inside all the time,
So you grew up in Puerto Rico and he grew up in Texas?
Yes, because when we moved to Texas, he was maybe 3 or 4. And so I was already...
Oh, he's a younger brother.
Yeah.
Okay, I see.
Sorry, I should have...
No, that makes sense. Yeah.
But we moved and I started high school in Texas. So my formative years, I think, for the most part, were in Puerto Rico. I just sort of became an adult in Texas, right? But he grew up here, essentially. And seeing the difference, right, to where I would get home and let's ride the bikes. Let's be outside. Let's get on a tree. We had this really beautiful tree in one of our neighbors' backyards, and it was so big that there was thick branches each way, and each of us had our rooms within this.
Oh yeah,
within
cool.
this tree, and so we had our areas and things like that. And so I don't know. I just spent so much time outside, and
here versus in Puerto Rico.
No, in Puerto Rico.
In Puerto Rico you did. Okay.
But here it just, you don't see that. I mean, and maybe it's because it was already at that stage where everything was getting really digitalized and people were just gaming a lot, or they were interacting with each other, but on Minecraft, or you know what I mean, and things like that. And so I really enjoyed my time there. I think that it's part of the reason why I have this itch to want to be outside a lot. I have been really toying with the idea of getting a motorcycle as of recent.
Okay.
And it's been eating me up. It's at the point where I know I'm going to do it. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of when and how I go about it. But I've talked to Brandon about the fact that we could go on trips together.
Wow.
He drives the van,
mm-hmm.
and I follow on the motorcycle, and then we can just...
Where do you sleep?
Well, he has converted his van. Have you heard about his van?
Yeah, didn't he get he's got like a legit van now, right?
Yeah.
So you would just sleep in the van with him, or?
Yeah, if there's space, or just camp out or something.
Yeah,
but the idea would be that if I get tired of just being on the road, then we can just haul the motorcycle and the van, and just both of us get in the van and just have a buddy to do it with and see the United States.
Oh, that's awesome!
Right?
That sounds like an adventure.
It does, and he said he was down to do it. Now I just need to do my part and get a motorcycle. Mm-hmm. It's just the idea of it. I'm programmed with it's so dangerous, this and that, but it is what it is. Everything is dangerous.
Sure.
I have to argue that for the amount of times I catch myself looking at my phone while I'm driving, it's probably just as dangerous as riding a motorcycle, because at least with the motorcycle, you have no other choice but to pay attention. I mean, you can't text and ride the motorcycle.
Yeah, it sounds like it makes you very present, that experience.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And so thinking about that and being able to just drive through just land, and see animals on the side of the road that are just minding their business, and I can just look at them, take pictures. That camera that's right there, that Minolta, I bought not too long ago, and I've really enjoyed taking pictures of my friends and things like that. And I don't know, going on a trip like that and just taking pictures would be really cool. It'd be really nice to make like a little photo book.
Yeah, beautiful.
So I don't know. It's just one of the 50 things that are circulating in my brain all the time, which I want to ask you, is there anything other than your painting and drawing that takes up your time in terms of hobbies or special interests and things like that?
The word that comes to mind is healing, and it's not my favorite word to use, but it's probably the closest that encompasses what it is. I've really committed my life to this. And it kind of goes hand in hand, and in some sense that's more important to me than art. I feel like my art is almost like a byproduct or a branch out of or off of that. But I really spend a lot of time literally just sitting and feeling and experiencing and asking myself questions and changing my relationship to myself. It's not a very exciting life externally. I've done some time in my past of doing more exciting things, and I feel, but it's where I feel guided to go, and through that process, I feel like more and more so, I feel at home everywhere I go, no matter what I'm doing.
Are you ever fully healed? Is there a point where you could see, yep, we did that, or can you see yourself getting there at any point?
I don't know what that means. I don't think there's a stopping point. I'm sure it'll change over time, where it'll take up less of my time. I feel like I'm in a phase, and it's already changed, because like I said, when I was in Maui, that was all day. That was all my time for the most part. And now it's like 50% of my time, and 50% of my time is doing art. But I don't have a lot of friends at the moment or anything like that. It's like I'm very focused on those two things, and like I'm sure things will shift, and like the more I do of that, the less I'll have to do to, as you were talking about earlier, like just maintain a good state. It'll be 5 minutes a day rather than hours a day. So maybe that's the goal, is just to have less of that maintenance upkeep, and it allow me to do more things and share that energy that I'm cultivating more, rather than just living kind of a monastic life.
Wow. That is so impressive, because I went to the doctor the other day because my knees were hurting.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that I had patellar tendinitis, and that essentially my hamstrings were too tight, and that I needed to religiously stretch every day, because if not, it could get to the point where it gets so tight that it can kind of like tear the muscle.
Mm-hmm.
And even that is hard for me, even though I know that there is a possible consequence. I just get carried away with so many other things that it's just hard to find the time to do that. So I'm very impressed by the fact that you've been able to consistently keep up with it. And I don't know, you're at this point now to where it's just you, it's part of your day. Like it's just,
it's all I know. I mean, it's not all I know, but awesome. It's just my life. It's how it is.
I was reading your website bio, and you seem to have a very specific connection to the word love. Where does that come from, or why? Why is that word so important to you?
I love that question. It's challenging in the realm of words, because words obviously can become a limitation at some point, but I find that the word love, of all the words, seems to give a strong guidepost to most people towards the direction of, let's say, goodness, for lack of a better word, which is not a very good word in my opinion, because it feels very, a lot of polarity or whatever, but towards that experience that's universally sought. And most kind of familiarly, most of us kind of associate it with maybe our relationships to our family, if we're lucky, or our relationships to a lover, a partner, romantic relationships. And those are, like, I think, very powerful mirrors of love. But love to me is a universal thing that's not dependent on any sort of relationship. Love is what we are at our core. Love is what life is made of. And again, that's not really a very logical thing to say. Like, I can't really explain why I'm saying that. It's just an experiential thing, and it's also with the using liberties with that word, because it is just a word, so that may not make sense to somebody else's definition of the word love. But it's that feeling of everything being connected, nothing being separate from anything else.
Sweet. I like that. Is there any religion tied to that? Or because, and I ask because of the fact that it seems like when I think about what you're describing as everybody sort of knowing each other and not feeling like anybody's a stranger, it makes me think of that concept of, if you think about Christianity, right?
Mm-hmm.
How sort of or is it Christianity? I don't know. Where God is in everybody, is everywhere, right? And so it would make sense, right, that the concept of a stranger is not really there because you're somewhat the same, right? You're connected. You're part of the same system. Which, talking about mushrooms, it's crazy how that works too, right? How you can have miles and miles and miles of just mushrooms and it all be connected to the same system, right? I don't know. I thought about that.
Yeah.
We were talking about that earlier.
Yeah, cool. That's a good analogy, actually. Because from the surface, it looks like separate mushrooms. But it's not until you look beneath the surface into the mycelium underneath that it's not that they're not that they're not separate at all. It's that they're separate and they're also connected.
Yeah, and it's very interesting how they share the same data. You know what I mean? It's just, it's so crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't even know where I was going with that. I think I forgot.
You're talking about religion.
Oh, yeah. So is there any influence on that at all? I mean, I know you seem to be a spiritual person. You mentioned not knowing how to feel about the word. Is that what you said earlier? But are you a religious person now? Because I know you said you weren't.
I think religion and spirituality are all gateways to the same universal truth. So my only apprehension with the word religion and spirituality is that they can be used to create more separation. And I believe that the goal, again, language is a little weird here, but just bear with me. The goal, if there is one, is to transcend the illusion of separation. So to have all these different religions that are preaching different things, but if you look into any religion's core, they're pretty much all pointing towards the same thing, but it's a thing that can't really be spoken very well. So, like, of course, people are going to conceptualize that in very different ways, and culture and power and politics are going to manipulate things in different ways. So I think there's truth and beauty in all religion and all spirituality, and I think there's corruption in all of it as well. Or can be, you know.
Great answer. I enjoyed it. Before we wrap up, I'm curious, in terms of, and dude, I'm at fault for this because I get so invested in the conversation that sometimes I forget to touch on the side hustling aspect of it all, right?
Yeah.
And trust me, it has happened on every single episode that I filmed. Sometimes it's not even like spoken about, but I don't care because the conversations have been so well that that maybe, you know, the whole concept shifts a little bit, but it's a good segue into sort of where I want to end with. But as of now, at this point in your journey, to not use the word career, right? Are you, other than healing and doing your creative work, do you do any other sort of work for money specifically?
I've been house sitting and pet sitting, which is great because it fits in very beautifully with those other aspects of my life. I can very much maintain my own container within that context.
For people you know, or is it just in general?
Yeah, mostly people I know.
That's awesome.
I've been kind of riding off of money. Like I said, I'm still pretty stingy. Like, I got holes on my shirt. I've been wearing this shirt since high school. That part of, I think for me, my process has been like only what I need and nothing more. And investing appropriately in things that are going to kind of pay back in certain ways. and it's granted me space. I get it. There's all this fear in us of like, oh, well, I need to maintain, I need to save up. And it's not that that's a bad thing, and everybody's got a different way of doing it. But how it's been for me is just being able to save up enough and allow myself space in my life to not constantly be working has allowed me to grant more time and space to invest in the things moving forward. We'll see. I mean, I'm still quite early in my process. I'm certainly not self-sufficient now, but I just I have some stuff coming up that's exciting. I don't know if I can name it at this point in time,
Sure.
but some opportunities and things that may potentially expand on stuff, and I just take opportunities as they come. I trust the universe. It's taken care of me up to this point. If I need to go and work a job to make money on the side, I'll do that. I'll do whatever I need to do. But I trust that it'll those opportunities will arise as they need to, and I'll just feel it out and do whatever I have to do.
That's awesome. That's awesome, and it's very motivating because I find myself stressing out way too much about what if on that aspect, right?
Which aspect?
The idea of needing money, right? In
Security.
general, that's right there. The idea of not feeling very secure is extremely scary.
Yeah.
And I was raised with a very financially conscious. Well, my parents are, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea of like saving for retirement and setting up yourself for the future, it's just something that I was never able to and will never be able to escape. And I'm thankful for that, right? Because it allows me to be a little bit more frugal and things like that. But it also adds this element of fear that keeps me from fully committing to just art sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a constant battle that I deal with, just trying to find my happy medium of keeping a 9 to 5, but also making sure that I have enough time to put into what I really want to do.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So, how can people support you in terms of whether it's following you on social media or I'm not sure if you sell prints or if you or your any more exhibitions that you have coming up that you're able to that are already public or whatever.
Yeah.
What's the best way for people to do so if that's something that that matters for you?
Yeah, currently, like we were talking about earlier, I have a studio at Art Co. And I exhibit there periodically. That changes all the time, so I won't give any specifics. But I have an Instagram, which is good to follow me because I'm still working on stuff. I have prints and things, but I'm changing stuff up right now. So I think if people like my art, that's great. I think that's really the goal, is just to have it in front of people's faces, and I think I'll continue to make paintings and monetize things, more opportunities to have money. But I think if people just follow, then those opportunities will be there, whether they want to take them up or not. Then if they like the art, great. If they don't, then go find some art that you love. Go find something that lights you up in this world, because it feels like that's what matters, like finding something in life that just lights us up and makes life worth living.
Sweet. Reece, I have really enjoyed this conversation. I hope you know that.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for saying yes to doing this. You're one of the first few to agree to this, and again, super excited that you were down to be a part of it. Thank you, Brandon, for connecting us, and I hope that we get to do this again at some point and just check in and see where our individual journeys lie at that point.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The channel is on YouTube, Rock Bottom Cartel, on Instagram as well. as Rock Bottom Cartel. This is the Side Hustled series. Thanks again for watching.
I'm outside your door.